right, everyone, welcome to another episode of What's Kraken. This week, we're chatting with our friend from Europe, Esben. He's our go-to person for all things music when it comes to Europe. And so, Esben, thank you so much for joining us today. It's great to have you.
Of course.
Today, we're going to be chatting about Europe, music festivals in Europe. What is that looking like? What the impact of COVID's been there? It's been a lot of up and down in terms of the last year when it comes to Europe, but we're seeing a lot of good news starting to pop out of both Europe and UK especially. So we'll chat with Esben a little bit about that. But before we dive into all of that, Esben, for everyone's context, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into, what you do today and your experience with all things music?
Yeah, of course. And thanks for letting me join your show, Harry. So my name is Esben. I work with Trade of Bits from Europe, from Copenhagen, Denmark. And I've been working in the music space for around 10 years now. I started off working at festivals. So I was doing the Copenhagen Jazz Festival, and I sort of was like, I found some geeky niche places I could do the website, and we built an app, and somehow I got really interested in the tech space around music festivals. And then I interned for a Canadian company called Greencover in 2013 as part of my master degree, and was then offered to stay on board there and to do business development for European festivals. So we did mobile apps for music festivals, and we worked with, over the years we worked with all the Live Nation festivals, the Coachellas, the Roskilde Festival, Wacken Open Air, almost like you name it. I would say like Greencover really became the de facto provider of mobile apps for music festivals. And obviously what I found interesting here was like a mobile app in the beginning was really a marketing tool and ended up as really a sponsorship tool, a data tool. So, I really saw this evolution, and a year ago I joined Trade of Bits. And for me, that was sort of like where the evolution really are right now. It's about data. It's about knowing your customers. It's about taking back the ownership of your fans from the social medias and so on. So I think this is a really interesting space to be in these days, and really something every music promoter should be thinking about if they're not already.
For sure. I just for context, like I started Trade Over Bits too as an intern during a master's program, and then sort of joined them full time after. So a lot of things in common there. But just before we dive into sort of Europe and what's been going on, to touch on one of the things that you spoke about in terms of apps and sponsorship and data and things like that, what is Europe's outlook when it comes to data, especially within the music promoter community? Because obviously the way that they think about it and the way that they think about activating data is very different from North America, right? So how did they approach it?
I mean, so I've been working for in companies that both span from North America and into Europe and the other way around. And it's really like Europe is really different from North America. And in North America, it's almost like you can do anything you want with data. And in Europe, that's not quite the case. I also do see, a lot of festival organizations doesn't have the same amount of people, let's say, skilled enough to understand, how to work with data. And I think the opportunity in Europe is really that a lot of teams doesn't have the resources to build their own data platforms or to look into sort of deep into how you build data platforms and so on. So it's definitely super different also with GDPR, and people are a lot more cautious about how they use their data and if they can use the data and for what purpose you want to use the data. And that goes from email marketing to sponsorship and so on. So it's definitely different, but I think Europe in some ways, like with GDPR in mind, is also moving towards the North American approach because, I mean, there's a lot of golden data, and I think people are starting to realize that in the coming years.
For sure. And is it different when it comes to the fan as well? Like, have you noticed differences when it comes to fans' expectations of how data is used and how they're communicated to?
Mm, I'm not really sure. You know, I think GDPR is great. It's a huge benefit for the fan, but um, my experience is that young Europeans are just as happy to consent as North Americans. So, you know, from a fan perspective, um, obviously it also depends a little bit like what countries you're in. In Germany, they're a lot more stricter than they might be like in Sweden or in the UK. So it really depends from country to country. But I do see a lot of like, you know, if you can provide the right benefits, people are actually okay to, you know, give away their email address or their some things like understandings about themselves and so on. So I don't think like young people in Europe are that different, so to speak, when it comes to actually consenting and giving away data as part of a sponsorship program, for example.
Yeah, no, that's fair, and I think that's why at Trail Bits as well. One of the things that we keep talking about a lot is authenticity when it comes to fans and communicating with them. So it's good to see that it kind of reflects across the border as well. And so now, just talking about Europe specifically and looking forward, for you specifically with Denmark, I think in the last couple of weeks there was the first festival that happened there, or the first outdoor show with 50,000 people. UK's been doing great. There's obviously been a ton of outdoor shows, and then there was the indoor arena show recently. So, what is the COVID outlook looking like for festivals or live shows or whatever that might be for the back end of 2021 and the start of 22?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not an expert in COVID, so I can only speak from my sort of the conversations I've had with different festival promoters and so on. And in general, it's looking positive. Most people are now vaccinated in lots of the countries. So, you know, here in Denmark, we have a 75% uptake in vaccinations. In Germany, it's 65. Spain, it's 78, and so on. So it's looking really good in a lot of countries, and especially here in Denmark, we've started to open up for full capacity arena shows. We had a band called Minds of 99 who played a show for 15,000 people in Kraken, which is the biggest stadium here in Copenhagen. And you know, it was crazy to see the pictures. Like on the Monday, I wasn't there, but like just seeing that and seeing the videos and checking out Instagram and so on was like looking into another world in many ways. And I think I saw Sweden is coming like in the next month, also opening up for a lot of restrictions, going back to do live shows and so on. So things are definitely starting to pick up. What I find, so what I'm seeing right now is that it's a lot of local. So, you know, Minds of 99, it's a Danish band. They play in Denmark. In Sweden, it's most likely going to be the same. You're not going to, for the rest of the year, I don't think you're going to see a lot of international touring. I think it's going to be a lot of, you know, local big acts who can, you know, take the big arenas and so on. And obviously in the UK, they have the benefit of having a lot of great bands there. I saw there was a Gorillaz show last week and so on. So they definitely have some. I think it's a little bit more back to normal in the UK, and the acts that are playing are a little bit more like the traditional arena bands and so on. Whereas in I think in the rest of Europe, we're going to see a lot of local, you know, big acts touring for the rest of the year, and then I think the most of the promoters are really looking into 2022, and I think they're looking into a packed 2022 because they have a lot of catch up to do. So that's, you know, fingers crossed that there's not going to be a new variant or something like that could, you know, block that progress. But yeah, I have a hard time. I mean, what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling at the moment is that a lot of organizers and promoters are coming, to us as a tech provider. They're coming back. Like the discussions have definitely been on hold for almost like 1.5 years. And then last year around this time, we thought, okay, maybe like 2020 is going to be great, or 2021. But I think it's different now. You can really feel that people are coming back with the belief that, there's going to be a festival season next summer. It's going to be touring from 2022. And yeah, I mean, hopefully that's gonna stay that way. I have a hard time seeing the industry go through another year without festivals and touring.
Yeah, no, 100%. And speaking of like just it being a new site to get used to, I remember Darshan and Dimitri went to Lala a couple of months ago, and it was just surreal. It was beautiful to see the festivals were back, but it was also a little surreal to see 80,000, 100,000 people, whatever that was, in one place. It definitely takes a little getting used to.
Yeah, I mean, it's like traveling back to the past or to the future or something like that. You feel like you're like those things hasn't existed for 1.5 years, which is a long time when you're used to going to festivals all the time. And yeah, I mean, that's really surreal to see people dancing and hugging and drinking beers and so on.
No, 100%. And you touched on this a little bit in terms of sort of promoters being excited for 22 and kind of coming back. How have you noticed a shift in their priorities between the 2019 planning cycle versus now? And what are they focusing on now when it comes to sort of planning the festival, road mapping? What are their timelines looking like? And what are they prioritizing when it comes to fan experiences?
Yeah, I mean, obviously a lot of things have changed, and I think one of the very, important things here is that a lot of teams have been reduced. A lot of staff has, pivoted into fintech, or I've it's a lot of people I worked with in 2019 that definitely is not in the industry anymore, and I think there's going to be a chase and sort of it's going to be different teams who are going to set up the new festivals, and I already see it now. I see that, let's say, they don't have the same manpower. You can see it on the mobile apps. They don't have the resources to sit and put in artist images for each artist, and there is definitely like gonna be I think 2022 is going to be sort of a bare minimum in a way. I think it's going to be very important for the promoters to put up their festivals and to delight everyone at the festivals. But it's still not really the time for the big investments. Like, you're not on a rolling train anymore right now. Like, it's really about getting that train up and running again. And then I think with the sort of the digital shift that has been also like happening, my experience is that it has come to the mind sort of not just the marketing people, but really going into the festival directors and the CEOs and so on, that, okay, we need to be available online. Like, a festival is, yes, it's a thing, it's 8 days or 4 days or 2 days or something like that, but they also need to be representative, like, all year round. They need to do fan engagement all year round. They might need to put up, more shows all year round. And, in many ways, I consider like there's been a few festivals that has done this great throughout the pandemic. Like Tomorrowland has done a phenomenal job doing, virtual events and so on. But I really, and sort of nurturing the fan base. And I think a lot of festivals now are realizing, okay, we need to do more digital activations. We need to be more relevant, not just for the days that our festivals is spanning, but like simply for the whole period. Because what if there's like, again, a new pandemic in 2 or 3 years, something like that, that's going to be critical to maintain and keep your fan base engaged. Yeah.
No, that's good to know, and it's good to get that larger context of what they're focusing on. You spoke a little bit about sort of slowly getting back on the train, and one of the things I'm assuming will be sponsorship, right? How do you sort of build that back up and focus on that as really building that revenue line item for festivals? You recently wrote a blog for us about specifically sponsorship. So, what are you seeing when it comes to that? What are festival directors focusing on, and how does data play a role in that going forward into 2022?
Yeah. I mean, I think specifically in sponsorship, I think already back in 19, there was sort of a shift going on as well, where, sponsorship teams, at least they were like trying to get into the digital space. I think it's been really challenging for many teams, because they haven't really like been able to sort of take it from like the traditional sponsorship where you have a big logo on the stage and so on into the digital space. And I think especially the last 1.5 years, it's just been we've just been bombarded with how you can activate a sponsor in the digital world. I think some of these like fantastic, cases like, was it Travis Scott and Fortnite and all those things. And I think, we've just seen so many different ways that sponsors and brands and creators can engage themselves online. And I think that's really gonna move into the festival space too. Brands, they are fully, they fully rely on data today. They fully rely on stats whenever they do activations. If they put money on Facebook ads, they are used to that they can get like these reports and so on. And I think in the festival space, there's been more like, it was fine, and there was a lot of people at your booth and everyone was happy, and you got the nice video footage and so on. But in the coming years, I really think that brands are going to require data. They're going to require a lot more, whether that is coming from QR codes or it's coming from, location data from a mobile app or something like that. That's going to be super critical for brands to get that ROI. Like they want to understand like how many visitors did we have, like compared to like the rest of the, sponsors, and were people, how engaged were they? How long time did they stay in our booth and so on? And I think there's like different technologies like RFID and so on that can sort of meet that demand. But I know, when speaking with these teams, these sponsorship teams, it is really like a challenge for them to sort of like get those, especially here in Europe, I think, get those digital activations going, get that data into the hands of the sponsors and so on. So I think that shift is really gonna, that has really been boosted by COVID. It was already ongoing, but in 2022 and 2023 and so on, like that's gonna be super big key, because I also think you're gonna see a lot of more sponsors that might not be interested in the physical space. Maybe they're interested in the brand, but they're not necessarily interested in what can I do on site. They might be interested in how can I, engage with your audience online, because that's essentially what I need. Like that's how I drive my business back home. So why should I, be interested in fun stuff on site? So I think that's something that's going to change a lot. And something that I think TradeWithBits is in an awesome position to sort of help with and facilitate, of course.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think you've really like tied all of it together really well in terms of how it's not just about hitting sponsorship, but it's about bringing all of that together into one ecosystem where there's sponsorship, there's fan activation, there's data collection, but also just the overall ability to have a better understanding of everything that your fans doing and reporting on that, and not just collecting data for the sake of collecting it. So I think that's a really good way to tie all of that together.
Yeah, exactly, and I think you're gonna see a lot of festival promoters like investing in data platforms in the coming years. That shift is happening now, and it is really about taking back the ownership of the fans, understanding your fans, driving value out of them with sponsorships, but also just being able to communicate with them on a more personal level and not rely on Facebook and Google to reach them, because those things have become a lot more expensive and a lot harder to do.
No, for sure. Awesome. So just taking a little bit of a detour, one of the things that we usually ask a lot of the guests that we bring on here to sort of help the next gen of people to work in marketing and music and sports and entertainment. What would your advice be to people that are looking to break into this market? What can they do today? What do they need to look out for? And what kind of things can they upskill themselves on to kind of join this industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think, Harry, we touched upon it in the beginning. I think interning seems to be a pretty good way to get into the industry. But I think one of the things that I would have loved to know a little bit more when I was starting was that, as a young person, like you think that the industry is like a really, it's record labels, it's festivals and so on. But what you realize when you're there, you realize this whole ecosystem around the music industry, and you have awesome companies, tech companies, and so on. So I think one good advice could be to sort of look into what you're interested in. Is that record labels? Is it festivals and so on? And what is actually happening around that space? I don't think. I would have loved to know more about that when I was 21 or something like that. But I think, go for your interest. That's what I did. I loved music. I was, a huge festival fan, and working at a festival was awesome. But I also know, today, I'm not gonna do it again. I want to be on the tech side, and that's what I realized when I was working at the festivals. But yeah, I mean, the ecosystem around music and sports and labels and so on, it's a fantastic ecosystem with so many awesome teams. And I think in today's world, it's everything is just gonna move in the digital direction. And if it hasn't already, there's so many awesome companies out there that always are looking for great talent and just curious people and good like-minded young people like you and I were in the younger days.
I love that you complimented both of us in there and just added it in, saying curious young great people like you and I. Beautiful. I love it. Cool. But I mean, you segued it nicely into another question that I wanted to ask, and it's something that we ask all of our guests. You spoke a lot about loving festivals and loving the energy of it. I agree with you that after a few years of doing it, you don't want to do it every single day, and you'd rather be on the other side of the barrier sometimes. But what would be your favorite fan moment from all the years you've worked in festivals or anything else in music?
It's really tough for me too, because I've had so many, but I think one of my favorite moments where I've always been a huge Arcade Fire fan. Shout out to Canada. But so Arcade Fire at Northside, I think it was 2015 or 16 or something like that. They've just released Reflector. I loved that album, and that was a great moment. I would also I had a pretty fun fan moment this summer when Denmark was playing the European Championships, and there was I rarely attend a soccer match, but this was just magic. I think after COVID and after what happened with Ericsson in the first matches, and it was European Championships in Copenhagen, and there was no one from the away team because they couldn't be allowed in the stadium because of COVID, and it was just pure magic. And for me, that opened my eyes into sports, and fan moments in sports too. And I think that was really good for me to try that out.
100%. I remember after that game, the next day on every call that you were on and that I was on with you, you complained about how you were reeking of beer and smelling of just beer that was spilled on you, which is beautiful.
I was actually doing the webinar right after that match.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us this week, Esben. And yeah, stay tuned, everyone, for our next episode of What's Kraken, where we chat all things music, sports, entertainment, and fan engagement. Stay tuned.